House will come to order. Reports from committees on rules and legislative administration.
Pepin from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Monday, May 7th, 2018, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bills. Senate file numbers 36, 73, and 3066, House file 3873, Senate file 2629, House file numbers 3763, 2746, 3196, 3689, 2945, 3015, and 3403, and Senate file number 2865. Pepin from the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration, pursuant to Rules 1.21 and 3.33, designates the following bills to be placed on the calendar for the day for Tuesday, May 8th, 2018, and establishes a pre-filing requirement for amendments offered to the following bills. Senate file numbers 3182 and 3596. House file numbers 3819, 2940, 3089, and 2847. Senate file number 2921 and House file numbers 4003, 2802, and 3390.
Calendar for the day. First bill on the calendar for the day is Senate file number 3656. The clerk will report the bill.
Senate file number 3656, number 1 on the calendar for the day, an act relating to state government, the second engrossment.
I recognize the member from Sherburne, Representative Knoblach.
Mr. Speaker, members, this is the Omnibus Supplemental Bill, and I would appreciate members, I'm going to move that the DEA 4099 amendment so that we can substitute the House language into the Senate bill.
Representative Knoblach, then it is your intention to replace the House language before you present the bill?
It is, and that is a procedural motion. I'd appreciate people's support.
Clerk will report the amendment.
Knoblach moves to amend Senate file number 3656, the second engrossment, as follows. Delete everything after the enacting clause and insert the following language of House file 4099, the first engrossment.
Discussion to the amendment. Seeing none, all those in favor of adoption of the amendment signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. Representative Knoblach, to your bill as amended.
Members, the bill as amended actually contains 4 omnibus bills. It contains agriculture, contains environment, contains state government finance, contains jobs. It also contains some obsolete language deletions, which is the base of the original bill. If you're looking for those, they're on page 261, lines 4 and 5 and 15 and 16. Delete some obsolete language related to buffers from last year. With that, members, I would like to yield to Representative Anderson P. to discuss the agriculture part of the bill.
I recognize the member from Pope, Representative Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And the leading off today is the Agriculture Finance Bill. And before I get too far into it, I'd like to thank a lot of those folks that helped to work on this bill. First of all, thanks to Representative Hamilton for his outstanding work on this finance bill. Also to Vice Chair Miller, who worked on the bill. Lead DFL Representative Poppy, thank you for your work on this finance bill. The committee administrator, Mark Nisley, the nonpartisan staff, Colby Sullivan, the fiscal analyst, Ken Savory, the CLA, Rachel Buckholtz, and the DFL researcher, Nancy Connolly. So thanks to those folks for their work on the Ag Finance Bill. Mr. Speaker and members, we didn't have a large budget target. $250,000 was the target for this bonding year, the additional funding for the Ag Finance Bill. We chose to use that funding in a couple of different ways. A major portion, about $220,000, going to help increase mental health work among farmers in Minnesota. Currently, we have one person who covers the entire state, and offers his services to help farmers dealing with this financial crisis, things going on in agriculture. And this bill would apply additional funding to help get one more staff person who is specializing in mental health to kind of cover the northern half of the state and to help farmers deal with this financial crisis we're seeing in agriculture. The other $30,000 in funding is a Representative Poppy provision that would go to the Department of Ag to increase their program in the Farm Advocate Services Program. Again, that's a one-on-one program where these folks have experience and they'll deal with farmers experiencing technical issues, financial issues, things like that. Another good program to help farmers in these tough times. The other major spending portion of this bill provides $35 million to the Rural Finance Authority. We gave them bonding authority last year, but again, because of the financial situation in agriculture, that funding is rapidly decreasing and is nearly extinguished. So they have asked for additional funding. Additionally, they had asked for $20 million, but the need is so great that we have increased that with the governor's support as well to $35 million additional bonding authority for the Department of Ag and the RFA program. Other provisions in the bill, a provision by Chair Hamilton to change the definitions in the forestry biomass program to allow a company that began production prior to 2015 to be eligible for the program if there's funding available, funding left from the other companies that are being helped in this forestry biomass program. The Representative Backer provision would extend the commission called the AFRAC program, which stands for the Agricultural Research and Education Council, which again deals with research in the very important area of fertilizer and containing it to where it should be, staying on the field. Very important work done by this AFRAC Council. That was due to expire in 2019. This provision would extend that sunset by 10 years. And this is a self-funding program that is paid for by farmers themselves with a 40-cent per ton fee on each ton of fertilizer they purchase, which goes to that research. I had a provision in the bill that dealt with kind of a unique situation, an off-sale liquor store that gets a license from the Department of Ag to sell ice that they make on premises. And because of a change, the license fee was increased by something like 900% because the department had to start using their entire gross sales amount when figuring the cost of that license. What this provision does, again, is go back to just using the revenue generated by their ice sales to determine their license cost with the Department of Agriculture. No change in the testing or regulations, just a decrease in the cost of their license. Another provision by Representative Backer that modifies eligibility for the bioincentive program. It clarifies some definitions and says that the source of the biomass should be within 100 miles of the plant or from within Minnesota. And the next provision by Representative Clark deals with eligibility for the Ag Microloan Program and some definitions modified dealing with aquaculture pertaining to specialty crops and livestock. And the next provision is a department provision that would allow municipalities to apply for loans from the Department of Agriculture if they want to study the possibility of a loan for an energy feasibility study. They'd be eligible now to get part of that help from the department with a loan in that program. And the last provision in the bill, Mr. Speaker, is the provision dealing with the nitrogen fertilizer rule. And what the provision says, we've heard this before in the House floor, is that when the Department of Ag finishes its work dealing with the nitrogen rule, it simply has to come back here probably next January, next session, for final approval before that nitrogen rule would go into effect. That, Mr. Speaker, is the bill, and with that I will yield to Chair Fabian to deal with the next part of this bill today. Thanks, Mr. Speaker.
Recognize the member from Roseau, Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, members, we have before us the Environment and Natural Resources portion of the bill. Before I start, I'd like to thank the members of the Environment Committee, especially Representative Hornstein, who's leaving. No, I'm just teasing you a little bit. Minority Lead Hansen and my Vice Chair, Representative Heinzman, all the DFL and GOP members. We try to run an enjoyable committee, a respectful committee. And before I go any further, too, I have to thank the really, really smart people. As you all know, our staff is incredible around here. Janelle Taylor, Bob Eliff, and Brad Hagemeyer. And our partisan staff, Peter Strohmeyer, Harry Miracle, Karen Johnson, and Amy Zipko. Amazing team that we have. We had a $750,000 general fund target, and we expressed my concern for the CWD. All of the money that we had in our general fund target was directed towards the DNR to continue battling the CWD situation that we have, allowing for them to do more testing and enforcement. We've dedicated accounts to that DNR at a few projects that we have funded. Representative Lewick has got $50,000 from the Heritage Enhancement account to do a report for recommendations on improving the health of natural wild rice beds. We've got a number of members who have issues here regarding snowmobiles and ATVs, Representative Eklund and Metza and Heinzman and Lewick. We got $1.4 million from the ATV off-road vehicle accounts for work on numerous projects such as the Prospectors Loop and the Voyager County and Taconite Trails, Voyager Country, excuse me, and Taconite Trails. We got $319,000 from the Mineral Management account to continue mineral research that helps the DNR in permitting decisions related to mining. And members, we have a number of different types of mining practices in the state that we're working on, and I think that in a natural resource-based economy, mining is extremely important. Also incorporated in this bill are several other policy provisions from members on both sides of the aisle, as well as many provisions from the state agencies. Representative Fenton has the creation of the account within the remediation fund for the MPCA 3M settlement. Representative Bliss has this prohibition on the MPCA from raising their water fees without legislative approval. Representative Nash has a provision in here. It's an educational piece regarding to reducing carbon monoxide exposure to people in ice houses. And I know that we have some people here that I think will be recognized in a little bit who are instrumental in that. Several regulatory reform measures, including Representative Backer's exemption from fugitive dust standards for temporary commodity storage facilities. Representative Torkelson has got language in here that codifies in statute the language from MPCA Commissioner Stein's memo regarding external peer review practices for water quality standards. Representative Lewick has his regulatory certainty for wastewater treatment facilities when they do upgrades to comply with new or modified effluent limits. I have some language in here putting into statute the agreement from last year regarding the dedication of the deer fee increase on your deer licenses, increasing money going into the deer management account from just $2 up to $16, which is roughly 50% of the fee total. Representative Fisher assured me he's voting for the bill. I'm teasing. He's got some language in here on coordinated watershed management, which is updates to the Clean Water Legacy Act and some local watershed management programs, and will provide more flexibility and support for local actions. Representative New has got some language in here that I know that many of you are familiar with, and if you ever went back and watched the tape of the testimony that was given on the DWI laws regarding snowmobiles, ATVs, and boats, it was very compelling. Representative Sandstead has got language in here regarding the Hill Annex Mine State Park. Representative Anselmo has got some language in here with regards to the salt applicator policies that are in here. And I've also got language in here regarding the 404 permitting if you do anything with road projects and so forth. You know, this is a big concern for a lot of people. We're trying to continue the process of taking back from the federal government the 404 permitting here at the state level. And we're just extending the timeline available for using those funds. Honestly, folks, we really tried to work together as a group, as a committee, to find common ground, dealing with issues on both sides of the aisle. This is a good bill and will help people throughout the state, but particularly those who live in and enjoy the greater outdoors in the greater Minnesota. And I thank you for your support. And with that, I would like to yield to Representative Detmer.
I recognize the member from Washington, Representative Detmer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And as people know, I chair the Veterans Division, and we have some excellent components of this bill for our veterans around the state of Minnesota. The Senate file contains $26 million in funding for our stadium reserve, from our stadium reserve account for the construction of 3 new veterans homes in Bemidji, Montevideo, and Preston. And I'd like to thank Representative Bliss, Representative Grosel, Representative Miller, and Representative Davids for bringing these bills forward to the division, Veterans Division. And we've worked about a total between these 3 communities, we've worked about 20 years in getting this information forward and get it to the position where we are at today on the House floor. The people of these veterans homes, and we need new homes for our veterans. The Vikings already have a home, and now we got to be thinking about the areas of the state that our veterans are so in need of homes. And for some of you, the veterans and their families in and around these communities deserve to have a veterans home nearby so that the family members can get to their veteran that is staying in these homes. And members, for most veterans that are in our 5 veterans homes, this is their last mission. They will come into the homes. Most of the ones that are in our homes now, our 5 veterans homes that we have around the state, are World War II veterans. And we could probably say in the next 10 years, that generation will leave us. Followed by the Korean War veterans, and now we're going to be seeing our Vietnam War veterans entering our homes. And if you've read recently, Congress has authorized nearly $700 million to the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs for our state veterans' homes. For their construction, there's a grant program. It's the largest appropriation, members, it's the largest appropriations that Congress has done for our veterans' homes. Nearly $700 million just appropriated. Minnesota currently federal authorized us 1,058 beds. That's what the federal VA authorizes Minnesota, 1,058 beds. We currently have 824 beds. Minneapolis, we have 350. Laverne, 85. Hastings, 200. Fergus Falls, 106. Silver Bay, 83. That's a total of 824. By building these 3 veterans homes in Bemidji, Montevideo, and Preston, that would give us another 216 beds for our veterans. That will give us 1,040 beds, still under the 1,058 beds that the federal VA has given to Minnesota, or allowed us to have. I say currently this capacity is because the federal government will recalculate these bed numbers and bed authorization after the next census count, which you know is coming up. The Minnesota bed count authorization may change. It could be increased or it could be decreased. So now is the time to act, members. Now is the time to act. The Senate File 3656 also contains provisions for a bill I authored for low-income housing project at Fort Snelling Upper Post. And members, this type of housing is not going to cost our taxpayers. We heard this proposal in the Veterans Division, and Governor Dayton, MMMB, Commissioner Myron Franz, members of the Minnesota Congressional Delegation, and many others support this project in the Fort Snelling Upper Post. You know, members, traveling the state and talking about the addition of these 3 homes, I think we were out on the western part of the state, and Chair Anderson, we had an open mic where people could come up and talk about these facilities that we are proposing. And a World War II veteran came up and he grabbed the mic, well-spoken, and he sat down and he said, By the time this veterans home is built in my community, I won't be around. He's in his mid-90s. But then he said something that really stuck with me. He said that it's not for me, he said, it's for the veterans coming behind me. And I will always remember that statement by the World War II veteran. My father is 95 years old and is a World War II veteran, still lives in his home. He's fortunate. He has the health that he can stay in his home. As I mentioned before, the veterans that are living in our 5 homes right now, that's their last mission in life. And members, our young veterans now that are currently serving in our armed forces, they're watching us. They are watching us. They want to see how we treat our veterans because they will be someday in the same situation with our veterans' homes. They're watching. The young ones are watching us. And we can say that the character of a state or character of a nation can really be evaluated how well we treat our veterans. And members, and Mr. Speaker, I would like to now yield to Chair Anderson S.
I recognize the member from Hennepin, Representative Anderson S.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, I just want to do a few thank yous before I go into the description of the bill. I'm fortunate to work with a wonderful staff and with wonderful members on the State Government Finance Committee. First, I want to extend my thanks to Shirley Cotterick, John Hultquist, Brian Cook. I also want to thank DFL staff, Jim Gelbman, our nonpartisan staff, Matt Gearing and Helen Roberts, who all work very hard to make sure that as members we have the information we need to make some very serious decisions here at the Capitol. I also want to extend my thanks to all of my committee members that serve on the committee. Especially want to say thanks to Representative Bob Detmer, who takes care of the Veterans Division. And also want to say thanks to Representative Liz Olson, who stepped in a pinch when Representative Sheldon Johnson became ill. Appreciate her work and the questions that she has as part of that committee. We're down 2 members so far, Representative Sheldon Johnson and Representative Lilly. I swear I have nothing to do with that. So I hope both of them get well and are back here soon. Folks, as far as the bill itself, we do a couple of different things. As Representative Detmer pointed out, we have an opportunity here today to do some really good work for the veterans who have dedicated their lives to our freedom that we have, our ability to be here on this House floor and to have this discussion. We can have these $26 million out of this bill is dedicated out of the Stadium Reserve Fund. When you look at these reserve funds, they are the excess of the excess. It is the frosting that doesn't fit on the cake, folks, and we are putting those dollars to better use. We are making sure that we're taking care of our veterans. But on top of that, we also take care of a priority that's near and dear to the governor's heart, and that is establishing a sexual harassment office for our state employees. So we have that funded also out of the state stadium reserve, the Viking Stadium Reserve. So those are 2 of the top 2 provisions of this legislation. We also look at efforts to streamline state government. We have a couple of reform items in here. I want to talk first about in the MNLARS issue. We gave them $10 million here earlier in the legislative session in the hopes that they would be able to get a better handle on our licensed vehicle title and registration issue that we're having with the state. As part of that, we want to make sure that there's accountability. So we have some accountability measures that are a part of this legislation. We also have some provisions that were added in the Ways and Means Committee that were authored by Representative Marquardt and Representative Poppe. One dealing with the issue on the state auditor in the recent court case that voted in favor of the legislature, that we had the constitutional opportunity to do what we did. And then also taking care of the city of Austin and some pension issues that they were dealing with. In addition to that, we have legislation in here that puts in place the cap on transfers to the governor's office. The cap was in place until about 2011-2012 at about $720,000. This cap was about the governor taking funds from other state agencies and transferring to his office. Since that 2011-2012, that governor's office has transferred a total of $2 million this year alone. And so we want to put that cap back in place at around the $750,000 mark to make sure that we're keeping our agencies whole. As far as other priorities that are part of this legislation, I mentioned the Veterans Homes, the Sexual Harassment Office. We also have some legislation here dealing with the issue of cybersecurity. Representative Jim Nash has worked very hard on this issue. We're going to make sure that agencies are making cybersecurity a priority by making sure that they set aside funds as part of their budget for IT functions, that is part of their priorities. We also have some language as part of the legislation to make sure that the Secretary of State has cybersecurity centered on our voting system. We're able to capitalize on federal government giving us $6.9 million in exchange for us putting $220,000, which I think is a pretty good exchange for that. We have some language in the bill, some funding for the program that Representative Mariani has supported in the past. This is on the reading program for children to help them read. And we also have a provision for Representative Crecia that he's worked on, helping to help teachers become better educators on economics in high schools and elementary. Some other provisions that are in the bill, Representative Roz Peterson carried the legislation making public subsidy fair across the board for all candidates, and I think that's a great revision to how we handle things on the campaign finance side of things. Representative Vogel has worked very hard on the Legislative Budget Office, getting this established. This is something that both the House and the Senate on a bipartisan basis have worked towards. This office will finally give the legislature their own budget office that will help us understand when we put out legislation what the fiscal impact will be to the state. I think that's a great measure that he's put in place. Other provisions that are included in the bill, we've got Representative Rena Moran has the hair braiders repeal language as part of this legislation, and Representative Flanagan has the provision on the eyelash repeal too. What we found in dealing with these two issues is that it was penalizing these small business, primarily women-owned businesses, and we want to track that back so that we're not penalizing folks that are trying to do good work for and be good business owners. Other provisions that are in the bill, two of them that I've carried, it's the dealing with the issue of the stadium suites. As you heard last year, there was abuse of the use of the stadium suites by the MSFA board. What we're doing is we're putting guardrails in place for whoever is there for the future to make sure that this asset, the state asset of ours, is never abused in the future again. On top of that, we're capitalizing on the fact that we have 3 suites that we ultimately do not need to have that many of suites. So we want to repurpose those suites and then take the revenue from that and have that go towards paying down the debt on the stadium so we can pay off the stadium debt faster, which I think is a good reform in place. Then also another measure of mine is dealing with redistricting. Folks, every 10 years when we're dealing with the redistricting issue, we do not have principles in place. It is up to the legislature at that time to adopt a set of principles. And then if the legislature doesn't get a bill that is signed into law by the governor, then we run into the problem that it goes to the court. We already have a system where the court is the default if the legislature and the governor's office can't agree on a redistricting plan. And then the court decides what the principles are. I think it's important for us to have these principles in place as a guide to the courts so they don't have to determine their own principles. These principles in themselves prevent gerrymandering. These principles say that you have to have contiguous districts. You cannot have all these squiggly line districts that you've seen in these other states. You can't have that. It also makes sure that you cannot pack minorities and you can't crack minority areas. So it's all the general standard principles that every good governance has, and we're putting those into state statute to make sure that they're here now and forever. Lastly, I just want to highlight one other provision that's part of this bill. Representative Albright worked very hard on the Met Council and getting the reforms. He's done work on this for several years on a bipartisan basis. I think this is a great reform measure, and happy to carry that provision as part of this bill. There are a lot of other great provisions in this bill, but knowing that I don't want to tax your patience. So members, appreciate your time, and I yield to Representative Garofalo.
The member from Dakota, Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And like others before, I want to say thank you to our exceptional nonpartisan staff in the jobs, energy, and housing arena. We are truly blessed to have exceptional staff with not only success in the legislature, but also outside of it. I want to thank 2010 Olympic gold medalist Anna Shaleen for her work, Time Magazine's 2006 Man of the Year Ben Weeks, Grammy Award-winning recording artist Bob Eloff, and as well as Nobel Prize winner for economics Chris Zempel. They all do an exceptional job working on our nonpartisan staff. Also, for the partisan staff, I want to thank Dr. Bill Glahn, Adam Seidel, on the DFL side, Dave Sullivan, and the most patient committee legislative assistant in the Minnesota House of Representatives, Amelia Ellard. So, Mr. Speaker and members, what you have before us is the jobs, energy, and housing provisions. This bill is $15 million above base. Every single penny of that amount goes into broadband expansion. Yay. So we got more money going into broadband. Beyond that, there are priorities that the committee has funded in terms of job training, in terms of making sure that we have water infrastructure projects that are of a high priority in members' districts. But every single one of those projects is paid for by cutting other areas of government. And the committee felt very strongly that at a time when unemployment in our state is at 3.2%, the feedback we're getting from the business community, from nonprofit groups and others, is that it's better, instead of taking those dollars and putting them into corporate subsidies, into businesses, we're much better off repurposing those dollars and instead putting them into job training programs, water infrastructure programs, and other high priorities. There's some other important policy changes outside the general fund that are taking place. So at this time, I will yield to Representative Barr C. from Anoka, and he'll talk about some of the exciting areas that are taking place in energy that are sort of a win-win for the state of Minnesota.
I recognize the member from Anoka, Representative Barr C.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. The Renewable Development Account is funded by cask fees from the spent nuclear rods, fuel rods at the nuclear power plants in the state of Minnesota. They're currently charged on a per cask fee, and we've changed that to a flat fee per year, which will result in a $300 million savings to Xcel Energy electricity ratepayers over the current licensing for those nuclear power plants. That still leaves money in the Renewable Development Account for the Prairie Island Indian community to receive $40 million to convert to a zero emissions community, which will be the first in the nation. And with that, I yield my time to Representative Garofalo.
Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Also in the area of housing, there's some exciting changes, rules changes. So at this time, I'll yield the floor to the member from Scott, Representative Vogel.
I recognize the member from Scott, Representative Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last year we had a lengthy debate on housing regulation, residential housing regulation, and I went back to work and put together a new bill that is included in the Omnibus bill. And what this does differently than last year is it doesn't mandate that the legislature has to approve the regulations. What it says is that we have to be notified, but more importantly, it has information in there that says that the different agencies can work in combining, rather than being silos, in combining their efforts to bring regulation to make it more affordable. So as you look at the bill, I'd have you center your attention on subdivision 2, where it talks about agencies working together to make housing more affordable. And I'd yield back to Chair Garofalo.
Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And finally, I'll yield the floor to Representative from Anoka, Representative West, who's going to talk about some of the changes we made in affordable housing to provide more housing options for those who are seeking affordable housing in our state.
Recognize the member from Anoka, Representative West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I had two housing provisions in the bill for manufactured housing. One repeals an obsolete rule that prevented modular homes from being placed in manufactured housing parks if there's no city ordinance and the manufactured housing part actually wants it. This is a good reform that allow more choices and options for people who choose to live in this incredibly affordable arena in the housing industry. And then also a governor's provision that I also carried was increasing the Manufactured Housing Relocation Trust Fund from $1 million to $3 million. This will allow, it was almost depleted this last year, so this increase will ensure that if there is a park closure, there will be money available for these individuals who have to relocate because their park is closing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, and again, members have the spreadsheets in front of them. You'll see that there are several DFL policy as well as funding priorities contained in the bill, as well as those of the GOP side. And I want to thank members of the committee for their strong support of the two-tiered minimum wage, particularly for the Restaurant Workers of America who came in and made the case to members of the committee explaining how they wanted their high-wage jobs to be preserved. They did not want to see their jobs replaced with lower-wage counter-service model restaurants. And so there's very strong argument before the committee that people felt very positive about. So, Mr. Speaker, at this point, I'll yield back the floor to Chairman Knoblach.
Representative Knoblach.
Well, Mr. Speaker, members, you've heard the description of the bill. Before we go to amendments and discussion to the bill, I want to thank the chairs who have spoken and been involved in putting together this particular bill. Chair Paul Anderson, Rod Hamilton, Chair Fabian, Chair Sarah Anderson, and Chair Garofalo, who you just have heard from. I'd also like to thank the members of the Ways and Means Committee. We'll be certainly talking about other Ways and Means issues in the coming weeks here, but it seems like a good, appropriate time to recognize those members, and in particularly Minority Lead Lyndon Carlson. And finally, I do want to thank our staff, Gene Coddington, my legislative assistant, who's done such a good job on the committee, Harry Kennedy, the new committee administrator this year, who has done the job before and stepped forward to do it again when we needed him. I want to thank Bill Marks, our nonpartisan fiscal staff, who everyone knows and has worked here for so many decades to keep things on the straight and narrow, shall we say, on the accounting side. Colby Sullivan, our counsel, as well as the DFL research and House research, Bill Glahn, and the others who are involved as well in terms of our pages. So with that, Mr. Speaker, members, I turn it back to amendments or debate.
Representative Nash, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. Speaker, point of personal privilege.
State your point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to rise to recognize a family here in the crowd today that came down because of a provision in the bill that Chair Fabian inserted, and they were on a short time frame, so I wanted to stand up and recognize them. Members, we'll be debating this bill, and we'll be having possibly some disagreements, but this is a point where we all can agree. Earlier this year, this family lost their son Sam to death due to carbon monoxide in a fish house. They are close personal friends of mine. I've known them for years. Sam and my son James wrestled together. We've fished and hunted together, and this is a tragedy. But what's unique about this place, members, is that we all can agree to come together and work together, and I just want to thank several people. I want to thank Chair Fabian, I want to thank Amy Zipko, I want to thank Assistant Commissioner Bob Meyer with the DNR, Lieutenant Colonel Rodman Smith with the DNR, because the provision that is in this bill is going to create a working group at no cost to come together with interested stakeholders to make sure that this doesn't happen again, because it is absolutely life-changing. I can't imagine what my friends, the schoolies up there in the balcony are going through, but members, this is where we can come together and use our voice, use the power of our office, and use the bill that we have in front of us to help prevent this from happening again. And members, if you would turn to the gallery, my friends the schoolies are up there. They are still heartbroken. This is still fresh on their minds, but I want them to come down here and let them see that we are all behind them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Members, we have a former member with us this afternoon, Alan Welly, served from the Wilmer area from 1983 to 1994. Would you join me in welcoming him back to the chamber? There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Newberger moves to amend Senate File Number 3656. The second engrossment as amended as follows, and the amendment is coded A3.
I recognize the member from Sherburne, Representative Newberg. To your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. The A3 amendment deals with the cottage food industry. A few years back, we were approached by a group of mostly single moms and older women who wanted to have some help with their home business. It was a bipartisan effort. Senator Dibble and myself worked on this, and we were able to help these gals, a lot of these families, really to give them the opportunities that they needed. We knew, though, as we were progressed through the next few years, that there'd be a few tweaks that would have to happen. And I met with the stakeholders, I met with the cottage food folks, and they had a list of things, and I said, what's one thing? Just tell me the one thing that if you could have, what would it be? And they said, Jim, we really need to be able to, if we choose, to register as an LLC. And for the reason is just about any other business, if you have a radio repair shop, a computer shop, a photography studio in your home, you can do that to protect yourself from losing everything in the event of a catastrophic lawsuit. If someone is at their home and they're baking something and they use an ingredient that wasn't produced by them, but there was something wrong with it, chances are the ladies that are producing these bakery goods, they're the low-hanging fruit. They're the ones that are going to get targeted in the lawsuits. And they shouldn't have to lose their retirements, their homes, and everything they own over a lawsuit like that. They should be able to register as an LLC like any other home business and have liability insurance. We met with the Department of Ag. We met with the stakeholders. This was agreed to. Folks, I just really would appreciate your support on this, and I know this has been a huge blessing, a really big blessing for Minnesota, and this is just one more way to continue to move forward to bless these folks in this industry. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I will yield for questions.
Discussion to the amendment. Representative Anderson P.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yes, we heard this bill in committee. It's a good bill. A lot of work has been done on it. Some compromises made, so I would encourage a green vote.
Further discussion. The member from Mauer, Representative Poppe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good afternoon, fellow representatives. I have a question that I'd like to see if the author would yield.
He will yield. Representative Poppe.
I understand what the issue is, and I know that we have heard this in committee. I was wondering if you know if there is a support for this from the Grocers Association and the Midwest Food Manufacturers Association.
Representative Newberger.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Representative Poppe. I did have a brief meeting with one of the people from the grocers. Initially, he had brought up some concerns. We had a discussion about it, and he just shrugged his shoulders, and he realized that this isn't a threat to them, and they realized that. That's as far as it went. We've had maybe 1,000 people that are registered across the state that are obeying the law. And so this is such a tiny blip on their radar screen that after about a 5-minute conversation, that was the end of it. I didn't hear anything else afterwards.
Representative Poppe.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just, I guess I'd issue a caution. I'm just not sure if it has been as fully vetted as been described, but I know that the amendment will go on likely due to the will of the body here, but I just wanted to recognize that there may be some concerns based on some what the bill actually is.
Further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adoption of the A3 amendment, please signify by saying aye. All opposed, no. Motion prevails. The amendment is adopted. There is another amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hanson moves to amend Senate File Number 3656, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A5.
I recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Hanson, to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. I'd like to ask for a roll call on this.
Roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members and Minnesotans. This amendment relates to the issue of feral pigs. And I know many members have seen on television video of the devastating impact that feral pigs can have in many of the states around the country. We do not want feral pigs in Minnesota. And throughout this bill relating to the environment, there are a number of provisions where folks are bringing issues to the committee. Some of them are very valid and important, as Representative Nash noted. But some of them, this provision that was put in the bill actually came from Representative Green's grandson, I believe, who had been working on this project. And I hope there's general agreement that we don't want feral pigs into the state. The consequences that they can have in terms of the environment, but also to the pork industry of serving as a vector for bringing disease or spreading disease is important. Now, right now, if there is an escaped feral pig or if there was a wild boar that was brought in, those pigs have to be presented to the state. You're not allowed to keep it if you shoot it. And what's in the bill says that you would be able to keep, upon commissioner's approval, the feral hog. And the testimony that we had from the DNR is when you assign a value, and that value is you get to keep the meat. When you assign a value, you provide a value that feral hog has a value. And that leads to an incentive, the likelihood of more feral hogs. Now, I've done some research myself looking at the issue and listening to some of the other states. Their response was to try to have hunters take care of the feral hog problem at that point of infestation, that very beginning, and it didn't work. It didn't work. And so my amendment takes out the section that allows the hunter or someone to keep that hog upon commissioner's approval. This is kind of a variation of the good guy with a gun model. It says that, well, our professionals or the sharpshooters that get brought in, if there was an infestation, that we can do it better, and if we do it better, we get to keep the meat. I think that's the wrong direction. You should look, I believe right now, I'm sending a photo of a hog skull that I found on my property less than 2 weeks ago. I didn't release it. It was there. So the question is, are feral hogs, maybe they're domestic hogs that get released accidentally, and they survive a generation or two in the wild, and they are very prolific. This skull is, I brought up to the DNR, and they currently have it. But I'd encourage you to look at that and look at the damage that happens with that feral hog. It's too risky to consider this, and to consider keeping this in the bill. And I'd ask you, Representative Fabian, when we were talking before session started today, you said I needed to be persuasive to get your caucus to support some of the things. I'm hoping that the photo and the risk of including this are persuasive and that you would support the amendment.
The member from Carleton, Representative Sundin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I share many of the sentiments of Representative Hansen here, and I really do appreciate the fact that Representative Green brought his grandson in to speak to this issue. It's a serious issue. I've got agriculture land, and I enjoy hunting as well, but I just as soon hunt hogs elsewhere, not in Minnesota. Given that, we heard a little bit of testimony from DNR and from the younger Green, and it was very enlightening. And I'd like to ask Representative Hoppe if he would yield.
He will yield. Representative Sundin.
Okay, Representative Hoppe, thank you. Representative Hoppe, you heard all the testimony as well as everyone else in the committee, and we didn't really come up with any solutions for keeping the pigs out of Minnesota. Would you agree with me that to build a wall and have the pigs pay for it would be a solution?
Representative Hoppe.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I got up this morning. It is the National Day of Prayer. I did say a prayer hoping that you would use that line on the floor today. Thank you.
The member from Mahnomen, Representative Green.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to speak against this amendment. No one wants the hogs here, and that is the purpose of this coming forward. And yes, my grandson did investigate this. He's a very bright young man, and he looked at the situation across the United States and the devastation that these hogs are doing. And we want these hogs reported. And so the question becomes, is someone more likely to report that hog if they know that there's a chance they can keep it? Or if they want to keep it, would they not report it? It's not a question of if we're going to get them. I think it's already been established. We've already taken some feral hogs out of Minnesota. And if you do investigate this, you'll see why we don't want them to have a foothold here. So then we're back to the question, what is the best way to get them reported if they are there? And I think that if there is a chance that someone could say, yeah, I shot this hog and I'd like to keep it, but I need to report it anyway, is better than saying, if I report this, they're going to take it from me. Now, we did work with the DNR on this language, and that is why you see in here that they can only keep that hog if the commissioner allows it. So the goal here is to prevent them from getting a foothold. The goal here is that if there is one taken, or if they start to get more prevalent here, that we can try to manage it, get the testing done, and slow it down or stop it if we can. So I would encourage you to vote this amendment down.
Further discussion. Member from Roseau, Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And we just got a handout from DNR issuing their concerns about the bill. And there's nothing in here about their concerns with the language that they've worked out with Representative Green. I encourage a red vote on the Hansen A5 amendment.
Further discussion. Seeing none, excuse me, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And yes, Representative Fabian, and it's my signature on the DNR letter. But the question is before us. The question is before us, what is the risk? What is the best approach? Assigning a value, providing a value to those hogs, I believe, is too great of a risk. And I'd ask for a yes vote on the amendment.
Further discussion. Seeing none, a roll call being requested, the clerk will take the roll on the amendment. Clerk will close the roll. There being 52 ayes and 73 noes, the A5 amendment is not adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Becker Finn moves to amend Senate File Number 3656, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment is coded A28.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Becker Finn, to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would request a roll call.
Roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment removes language that is at best a bad idea and at worst a violation of the Constitution of the United States of America. If I've learned anything in my time here in this body, it's that many of you lack understanding of tribal sovereignty and lack understanding of our Constitution beyond one or two amendments. So I'm gonna walk through this so that hopefully we can all better understand what's going on. Treaties between the United States and Native nations are the supreme law of the land. And before you jump out of your seat to tell me that no, the Constitution is the supreme law of the land, it is actually the Constitution that tells us that treaties are the supreme law of the land. It is in Article 6. If you want to check, I always have my Constitution with me. Hopefully you do too. So if you support the Constitution of the United States of America, you should support the concept of treaties being the supreme law of the land. So the language that this amendment would take out is regarding Mille Lacs and the Fisheries Committee there. So in 1999, the United States Supreme Court upheld the rights of tribal members to hunt, fish, and gather in the ceded territory as dictated in the 1837 treaty with the Ojibwe people. To be clear, those rights have always belonged to the Ojibwe people and have always been held by them prior to contact with settlers, prior to Minnesota even being a state. They are not special rights. It's not special treatment. It's a right that was always held by them and was never ceded when they ceded the territory itself. Those rights were retained at all times prior to and after the treaty agreement with the United States. So I also don't want you to now stand up and talk about how it's somehow unfair for Ojibwe people to work to protect those rights that are guaranteed to them. If you want to talk about unfairness, please keep in mind what Ojibwe people have endured for centuries. If you choose to not see this suffering and unfairness endured by your Native neighbors and constituents, you are willfully choosing to lessen that Ojibwe experience here in Minnesota over the past 300 plus years. So with that backdrop, following the 1999 U.S. Supreme Court decision and related litigation, the 1837 Ceded Territories Fishery Committee, Technical Committee was formed. The committee was formed by agreement between sovereign Native nations and Minnesota government. Now most of you, and especially those of you who have experience in business, you know that an agreement is a contract. And contracts require offer and acceptance and agreement by both parties. If you have a finalized contract and you've already signed off, one side can't just decide later that they want it to be different and add a new provision to that contract without the other side agreeing. These are basic legal principles, like first day of law school legal principles. If you choose not to accept these principles as our law, you are choosing to legislate poorly. Willful ignorance is your problem and shouldn't be codified in our law.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Krisha.
I'd like to rise to Section 124 Masons that in a debate, a member must confine remarks to the question before the House and avoid personalities.
Members, let us make sure that when we are debating the issue, not the personality. Representative Becker Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While I love the Constitution, it does not have a personality, so I'm just going to keep talking about our law and the Constitution. The language here in this bill that was based on a bill introduced earlier this session by Representative Erickson would essentially dictate that a new provision could be unilaterally added to a contract that's already been finalized. So my amendment would remove that problematic language. A vote for my amendment is a vote upholding the Constitution of the United States of America, a vote for tribal sovereignty, and a vote that shows you have an understanding of basic contract law. So be smart, vote yes. Thank you.
Discussion. Member from Roseau, Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I appreciate the conversation. This is permissive language. If the DNR can work out an agreement with the tribes, then they may do this. So I would recommend a no vote. Thank you.
Further discussion? Seeing none, a roll call being requested. The clerk will take the roll on the amendment. Clerk will close the roll. There being 51 ayes, 74 nays, the A28 amendment is not adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Becker Finn moves to amend Senate File 3656. The second engrossment as amended as follows. The amendment is coded A29.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Becker Finn, to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this amendment is very timely. We have the opportunity to vote on this amendment today. As Representative Fabian noted, there is some funding in the environment portion of the bill that would go towards enforcement of current law related to chronic wasting disease. And I believe there may be some amendments to the amendment. Okay. For those of you who are not deer hunters or have not been paying attention to this issue, chronic wasting disease is a fatal neurological disease similar to mad cow disease. It kills deer and elk, and it has been shown to be transmitted to some types of primates. In other words, you don't want to eat venison from a deer that might have chronic wasting disease. We know that chronic wasting disease spreads faster when deer live in close captivity in deer farms and can be spread to the wild herd when deer escape or have contact through fences. The Board of Animal Health oversees deer farms. This morning, in a joint hearing with the Environment and Agricultural Committees, we heard from the Legislative Auditor about their recent audit of the Board of Animal Health, and one of their primary recommendations was that we do a better job, that the Board of Animal Health does a better job of enforcing current law. And this amendment addresses that and makes it clear that the funds in this bill can be used to enforce all of the elements of our current statute regarding farmed deer and elk. So that would include escaped deer, reporting of destroyed deer, fencing requirements, individual animal tagging and inventory, inspection of facilities, importation of deer carcasses, and CWD, chronic wasting disease surveillance. I believe there's a lot more we can do to stop or at least slow down the spread of chronic wasting disease, but at a minimum, this will help us in enforcing current law. I would encourage a yes vote, and I would request a roll call.
A roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. There is an amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hansen moves to amend the Becker-Finn amendment to Senate File number 3656. The second engrossment as amended, and the amendment to the amendment is coded A55.
Recognize the member from Dakota, Representative Hansen, to your amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And Minnesotans, if following up on Representative Becker-Finn and the hearing that we had this morning, the joint hearing with Agriculture and and the environment. We heard from the legislative auditor, and if you hadn't had a chance yet, I would encourage you to look at the audit report. And a key finding on that, as Representative Becker-Finn noted, is on page 26. And there's a bar chart on page 26, and it shows, and it's stated Exhibit 2.5, an estimated 1/3 of Minnesota deer and elk producers failed to submit at least some of the required chronic wasting disease testing samples for their herds. And so my amendment says that the commissioner, and this amendment, the A55, and I've pulled the A54 amendment, the A55 amendment would say that a person who fails to test the deer, as they are required to do, that their license would be revoked. So this provides a serious consequence to bring compliance. Now, I think that compliance shouldn't be that hard to achieve. I'll just look at 2017, 64% of the deer and elk farmers did submit the required samples. 24% were some, but 12%. So in any industry, it's the bad actors that bring the good producers down. And so bringing compliance, having a real consequence if someone doesn't test that dead deer is important. I'd ask for a roll call on the A55 amendment.
Roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call on the amendment to the amendment.
And I'd ask for a yes
vote. Discussion to the amendment to the amendment. Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As I noted, there are more things that can be done to stop chronic wasting disease, and I support the amendment to the amendment and would encourage a yes vote. Thanks.
Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I appreciate the conversation, members. The hearing this morning was very enlightening. There's a number of recommendations in the OLA's report. I think one of the key recommendations is that the DNR and the Board of Animal Health are working together finally. They have signed a memorandum of understanding and how they're going to proceed with this. While I appreciate the seriousness of this issue, I also recognize that there may be some bumps in the road. I don't want to necessarily throw somebody under the bus, you might say, with this amendment to the amendment, who maybe is trying honestly to be able to comply with the law. I think that we should take just a moment to reflect on how we're going about doing this today. I would really like this to go through a different process rather than bringing an amendment to the floor and attaching that to another amendment and then passing that. I would rather have a further conversation. I think that it's an important conversation. With that, I would encourage a no vote on the A55 amendment to the amendment.
The member from Pope, Representative Anderson P.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. As Representative Fabian said, we had a meeting just this morning going over this topic, and Board of Animal Health, DNR, was there and had some good testimony. And I would agree that this is an important topic, and let's get this done right. And the two organizations are beginning to work together better. They have signed a memorandum, and again, we have time to work on this, and I think we don't want to do this on the floor as an amendment.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Minnesotans, listen, that we had the hearing this morning. We've been in session since February 20th. We had testimony this morning that since January 1st, 2017, $1.1 million has been spent responding to the outbreak of this disease. We also had scary testimony that the disease can be spread by vectors such as cats or scavengers. Think about that. We had testimony that 6% in Representative David's district, where there's been the outbreak, there's been a 6% reduction in deer hunters. Usually it's about 1 or 2 with normal attrition. So if we keep losing deer hunters, you're going to have more deer eating crops and more deer coming in contact with cars, and the loss of the economic impact of deer hunting, where there are 500,000 Minnesotans who hunt deer. So we, as a state, have been dealing with chronic wasting disease for a few years now. All we have to do is look across the border to Wisconsin, and we had testimony from our DNR commissioner this morning that it's too late. Governor Walker said he's going to do something now about CWD in Wisconsin. It's too late. To use an analogy, the horse is out of the barn. The deer's out of the cage. If we let this, any disease management, you try to control the outbreak, whether it's in livestock or whether it's in people. And so waiting, we had an informational hearing this morning. We didn't take any action. We just heard about it. We've got less than 3 weeks left in session. There have been bills that have been introduced. This body, all of us here, voted last year on an amendment on a moratorium to say no more. Just let's stop licensing additional, not expanding, not putting anybody out of business, but not having any more whitetail deer farms. And that was voted down a year ago. So we could have had hearings on this. Majority could have had hearings on it. The Republicans could have had hearings on this. We had the hearing today after the OLA came out with the report. Now we can't say we don't know. Can't say we don't know. Can't say we're waiting. We have a choice in front of us. Do we take action? And those of you that will be on the conference committee, you can work it out. Pass this, send it to conference, or do nothing. A red vote is doing nothing. A yes vote is strengthening enforcement to prevent the spread of this outbreak of this disease.
Further discussion? Seeing none, a roll call being requested. The clerk will take the roll on the amendment. Members, we are voting on the amendment to the amendment. Clerk will close the roll. There being 51 ayes, 72 nays, the A55 amendment is not adopted. Members, we return to the underlying amendment, the A29. Discussion. Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would encourage a yes vote on the 829.
Further discussion. Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And again, just encourage a yes vote. This is just making sure that the funds that are already in the bill can be used for the enforcement that they're intended to. So thank you.
No further discussion. A roll call was requested. The clerk will take the roll on the A29 amendment. Clerk will close the roll. Ward votes aye. There being 113 ayes and 11 nays, the A29 amendment is adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hanson and Wagenius move to amend Senate File Number 3656, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A33.
I recognize the member from Dakota to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. The A33 amendment relates to the permits, and as this bill had moved through the process and came into the Omnibus bill, it added industrial permits into this, not just the municipal permits, but industrial permits. And so that is what the A33 amendment is. And the amendment is to try to take that out.
There is an amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Hanson moves to amend the Hanson amendment to Senate File 3656, the second engrossment as amended, and the amendment to the amendment is coded A39.
The member from Dakota, Representative Hanson, to your amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'd ask for a roll call.
Roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members and Minnesotans. I think that many folks have seen the consequences and the cost of wipes that have been flushed and are causing great cost financially to our wastewater treatment systems. That non-flushable wipes are non-flushable. And so the A39 amendment has non-woven personal care disposable products or wipes that it would require labeling. I think Representative Pryor had a bill on it. I think Representative Gruenhagen has had a bill on it. I know we debated this in previous legislatures. But I think the time has come, as we're talking about the tremendous public cost that is going to be incurred for improving wastewater treatment systems, that we try to take preventive action by labeling and providing consumers with information not to flush those wipes. There's a cost to that. And by preventing that cost, we can help reduce the cost to the public and extend the life of our wastewater treatment systems. I'd ask for your support on the A39 amendment.
Mr. Speaker.
Representative Hoppe, for what purpose do you rise?
Mr. Speaker, I rise to a point of order.
State your point of order.
Mr. Speaker and members, under House Rule 3.21, germaneness, I would move that there's nothing else in the whole omnibus bill in Chapter 325. I would say this amendment expands the scope of the bill, and I would urge the Speaker to rule it not germane. Thank you.
Further advice? Representative Dabney.
Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if we go to Mason Section 402, amendments must be germane. Masons tells us that to be germane, the amendment is required only to relate to the same subject. It's a simple test, and clearly the A39 amendment meets that test. There is language regarding wastewater treatment facilities in the underlying bill. Representative Hanson is trying to deal with preventing these non-flushable wipes from entering into the waste stream to be dealt with then at those wastewater treatment facilities. Masons, I've shared some of Section 3, but if you look at Section 402, Part 2, the question, to determine whether an amendment is germane, the question to be answered is whether the amendment is relevant, appropriate, and in a natural and logical sequence of the subject matter. Clearly, preventing items from getting into the waste stream that don't belong there, that then have to be dealt with by the wastewater treatment plants, is in the logical order. I ask that you find the motion not well taken. Thank you.
Representative Pinto.
First, Mr. Speaker, point of parliamentary inquiry.
State your point of parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, is the point of order that we're discussing, is that to the secondary amendment, the A39 amendment, Mr. Speaker?
Representative Pinto, the point of order was by Representative Hoppe was to the A39.
Okay, Mr. Speaker, in that case, advice.
State your advice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the question as to whether a secondary amendment is germane really relates to, that's the question having to do with the primary amendment. So the relation of the secondary amendment to the bill is not really at issue, Mr. Speaker. I would point out that the secondary amendment is certainly germane to the underlying amendment. That is specified in 3.21B under our House rules. The secondary amendment clearly relates to the primary amendment. We'll be able to get to the primary amendment in turn, Mr. Speaker, but it does seem to me important that we follow the steps. The secondary amendment is clearly germane to the underlying primary amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Freiberg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Advice?
State your advice.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I find it a little bit ironic that we have this omnibus bill here dealing with so many different topics. It deals with state government, it deals with environment, it deals with agriculture, and deals with jobs, it deals with policy, it deals with finance, it deals with pretty much everything imaginable under the sun. So it's pretty ironic to me that we are that a motion's being made on germaneness, particularly in this case since it is clearly germane. I mean, setting aside the issue of whether or not an omnibus like this follows the single subject rule of the state constitution, one of the provisions, one of the sections of the bill does deal with the environment. And it's hard to think of anything more directly related to the environment than the issue that disposable, allegedly flushable wipes can cause to the environment. Both the underlying bill, the primary amendment, and the secondary amendment deal with the environment. Beyond that even, however, they all deal with the issue of wastewater and our wastewater system. There's clearly a connection here. I would argue it's certainly a lot more germane than the state government provisions that are in the bill or the jobs provisions that are in the bill, but these deal with environment, they deal with wastewater, and you should find the point of order not well taken. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Gruenhagen.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Advice? I would concur with
State your advice.
I would concur with Representative Hoppe's comments as far as germaneness, but I would also add I'm chief author on this issue in the House. We did meet with stakeholders from both sides, both industry and city concerns. It is a critical issue that needs to be decided, but it was a unanimous agreement by both sides of the issue, both the industry and the cities, that we should wait 1 year because there's national and international studies that are being completed on this, and they both wanted to see what the results of those studies were before they proceeded with any type of legislation. And again, that was unanimous on both sides. So I would request that Representative Hansen withdraw the amendment to the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Knoblach, for what purpose do you rise?
Advice.
State your advice.
Well, Mr. Speaker, under 3.21B, where it says an amendment to an amendment must relate only to the primary amendment. If you look at the primary amendment, we're talking about eliminating language relating to industrial national pollutant discharge permits. We're talking about industry here. When you go to the amendment, this is talking about non-woven person care disposable products. This is a very, very different subject than national industry pollutant discharge. And so because it's so different, I really do think that you should find for the point of order.
Members, after having listened to advice from Hoppe, Grunhagen, Knoblach, Dabney, Pinto, and Freiberg, I find the point of order is well taken.
Mr. Speaker,
Representative Hansen.
I would appeal the decision of the chair and ask for a roll call.
Hansen appeals the decision of the chair, requests a roll call. Seeing 10 hands, there will be a roll call. 15 hands, excuse me. Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Just to go over a couple of the points. Sorry, Mr. Speaker, the microphone cut out there. The amendment that was ruled out of order is relating to a permit system for pollutant discharge. And in the bill, that effluent limitations compliance is on page 79. And it relates to the permit and the compliance with that permit. Now, in this bill and in the capital investment bill that'll be coming, there's discussion about wastewater treatment. And in the capital investment bill coming, there's going to be significant funding for wastewater treatment. Prevention, labeling on items that affect that permit. I think maybe some of you have seen the photos from a wastewater system. I think it was a wipeberg is what they called it. It was a giant plug of flushable wipes that had been flushed. Taking action and having that relevance, it is relevant of the secondary amendment to the primary amendment and to the bill, because we're talking about Minnesota's waters. And I would ask for your support in the appeal.
Representative Kresha.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And parliamentary inquiry.
State your parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, I'm wondering, is there a section of the bill that relates to everything under the sun?
No.
So with that, Mr. Speaker, because everything under the sun is not included in this bill, I would find that the ruling be well taken.
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, members, we have a situation where the question is the germaneness of a secondary amendment to a primary amendment. I'm sorry for bringing this up every day since it happened, but I just don't know what else to do. 3 days ago, we had a primary amendment that related to renters and homestead credits, a secondary amendment related to local government aid from Representative Drazkowski, and the argument was made by Representative Knoblach, the very person who made the final piece of advice in this situation, that said they both relate to property taxes, so close enough, and the majority upheld the ruling of the Speaker in that case, saying that yes, that it was germane, and finding the point of order not well taken. Members, I would ask you, please, let's have the rules apply both directions. It's exactly the same situation. You said close enough 3 days ago. A number of us voted against that. You overruled us. It's now the will of the body. The statement has been made. And I really would ask any Minnesotans watching this to understand the rules are interpreted by a speaker appointed by a majority, but ultimately speaking for the body. And so I'm appealing to my colleagues, please. It may not be on this vote, I hope it is, but on some of these votes, please, the rules need to apply both directions. And so I would really ask you, I don't know what else to do. 3 days ago, the exact situation, and you went exactly the opposite direction. Same thing, close enough, it's property taxes. Look at this. These situations, the primary amendment, secondary amendment, they are clearly far more related than the amendments that were up a couple days ago offered by Representative Drazkowski. So I'd ask you to please find the point of order well taken and overrule the ruling of the chair, of the speaker, and let's try to have some parity between the majority and the minority. For a number of us who are going to be serving this body for a number of years, we hope, and we certainly want to have that apply. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Knoblach.
Well, Mr. Speaker, the case you cited 3 days ago, Representative Pinto, I think is totally different. Both the amendment and the amendment to the amendment really did have property taxes in both of them. In this case, we've got an amendment that is very narrowly constructed, just deletes a few words and specifically speaks to industry, to discharges by businesses, to discharges by industry. Then we've got an amendment to the amendment that's talking about setting up a new section of law that starts and is called non-woven person care disposable products. I guess I'm not aware of any industries that are discharging on a regular basis non-woven person care disposable products. And if you look again at the rule, it's very clear that it's a case of the amendment to the amendment relating to the underlying amendment, 3.21A. You know, if you had introduced this amendment to the amendment, Representative Hansen, just as an amendment to the bill, I think I'd probably be with you that probably would have been germane, but it's not germane to the underlying amendment. And so I would urge people to sustain the ruling of the Speaker.
Representative Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And briefly, I'll just point out both of these have to do with pollution. They relate to one another just as much as the property tax a couple days ago. The new subject introduced by Representative Drazkowski's amendment a few days ago was local government aid. It was not at all in the primary amendment. That's a major topic that came in brand new in that secondary amendment, and we said because they both relate to property taxes, that's good enough. You can say industrial pollution, we can draw the line wherever we want, but the general topics in my mind relate, and I would certainly ask colleagues to rule against the Speaker in this particular case. Thank you.
Members, the question before the body is, shall the decision of the Speaker stand as the judgment of the House? A yes or green vote supports the ruling of the Speaker. A no or red vote goes against the ruling of the Speaker. With that, the clerk will take the roll on the appeal. Clerk will close the roll. There being 74 ayes and 51 nays, it is the judgment of the House that the decision of the Speaker shall stand. Members, we return to discussion on the A33 amendment. Discussion. Representative Wagenius.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Normally, folks, a wastewater treatment system has to upgrade if there are new standards. And what this section in this bill does is say, well, no, if you're an industrial plant or you're a municipal plant, you get a 16-year free pass. And what Representative Hansen is doing is saying, wait a minute, you industrials should not be getting a free pass because your argument was you didn't want to spend the money. Rather, you want to put your pollution out in somebody else's water. So let's look at the map I handed out. I handed it out because it has in it the upper Mississippi. It's kind of in a funny color green. It's probably appropriate. This is the upper Mississippi basin, and 1 million Minnesotans, more than 1 million Minnesotans, drink the water from this basin. Part from St. Cloud, and you'll see that in the line outlined in the blue. But the whole basin is the green. But look at the numbers down here. Upstream from St. Cloud, there are 54 industrial facilities. They're the ones that are getting a free pass under this bill. Upstream from the Twin Cities, there are 110 industrial facilities. These are the facilities that want to put extra pollution into your drinking water. If you live in St. Cloud, if you live in Minneapolis, if you live in St. Paul, or if you live in a number of suburbs that use those cities' drinking water systems. Once there's a standard, and you know it's not good for people, mainly it's not going to be good for little kids, we shouldn't be allowing it.
Further discussion. Member from Hennepin, Representative Hornstein.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker and members. And I think Representative Wagenius raises an excellent point. And these permits make a difference. These permits clean the water. And you know, back in the late 60s, in my home state, I grew up in southern Ohio, but in northern Ohio, the Cuyahoga River actually caught on fire. It was so dirty, it caught on fire. And Lake Erie, one of our wonderful Great Lakes, was declared dead. Fish were actually washing up on the shore, and they actually declared it a dead lake. It was green. And so then we had the passage of the Clean Water Act in 1970. And we began to hold some of these industries accountable, and some of these discharges were significantly reduced. And this was happening all over the country, not just in Ohio. And lakes came back to life, rivers came back to life, people enjoyed fishing and swimming. And so when we put off for 16 years any additional accountability for these industrial polluters, we take a step back, members. We take a step back. And we can't be doing that because these permits make a difference. These laws make a difference. And so that's why the Hansen Amendment is so important. We did exempt the municipals. I was concerned about that. But this is a whole nother ballgame here. We have some of the largest industries in the state are now going to get what I would call a 16-year holiday from accountability, really. So please support the Hansen Amendment.
The member from Aiken, Representative Lueck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would urge a red vote on this amendment. A couple things that have been said here on the floor I don't agree with. One, there's no free pass involved here. These entities, whether they're wastewater treatment plants for city or whether they have to do with industry, all have to comply with the current standards. The business that they're just out there intentionally dumping pollution into the water so they can all flow down to St. Paul and Minneapolis. I can just say that's a pretty harsh and a damning statement against industry and hardworking people throughout Minnesota. Those folks aren't out there trying to pollute. The other thing that hasn't been mentioned yet in this, there's a little precursor comment in there before we talk about whether it's an industrial or a municipal wastewater treatment plant that confirms or affirms that that 16-year window still has to be in congruence with federal regulations. And the governor signed a very similar bill last year, but it got tangled up in rulemaking. It did not include this particular element in here. But again, folks, I think we've got responsible industry out there that do work by the rules, and I would certainly urge a no vote on this amendment.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd ask members to take a look at the amendment. And the amendment just strikes the industrial discharge permit, and it tasks The amendment tasks the commissioner of the PCA in consultation. So it's not a stakeholder group, it's a PCA effort to consult with the municipalities and other permit holders to identify additional methods. So I go back to what I mentioned earlier, that this industrial permit was added in the creation of the Omnibus bill. Now, Representative Lewick mentioned about the clause to the extent allowable under federal law. I, for one, am not confident with the current federal Congress or president to serve as a backstop for Minnesota water quality. I am not confident in this current federal representation to provide protection for our water quality. Minnesota has always done better. And, again, the amendment is relating to the industrial permit uses and tasking the PCA in consultation with the municipalities and permit holders to identify methods to protect the capital investments. Now, we could have protected those capital investments by doing the WIPES amendment, but we wiped that from the debate. We wiped that prevention from the debate, and so what we have in front of us in the primary amendment is relatively simple. And for that simplicity, I'd ask for a roll call, Mr. Speaker.
Roll call being requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call. Representative Hansen.
So Minnesotans and members, if you think it's okay to just count on the federal government to protect our water quality for 16 years, as Representative Wagenius and Representative Hornstein mentioned, then you should vote against the amendment. But if you think there's a different way, where we can look at this question of industrial uses, have the PCA, the municipalities, and the permit holders to come back with ideas and do this better with a Minnesota model, then vote for the amendment, and I'd ask for a yes vote.
Member from Roseau, Representative Fabian.
Thank you, members. Well, I appreciate the conversation again. I support the language that Representative Lewick is talking about. I'm opposed to this amendment. It makes no sense to me why we would give regulatory certainty to government. Give regulatory certainty to government, municipalities, but not to industry. Okay? Not to a sugar beet plant in East Grand Forks, or an ethanol plant, or a paper mill in International Falls. I don't understand why the DFL continues to attack businesses. I'm sorry. I don't get it. What we're trying to do here is level the playing field. What we're trying to do here is give businesses, many of which are housed in your communities and in mine, and to somehow suggest that they don't care about the water, they don't care about the environment, I find that to be preposterous. The people that live in northern Minnesota, where I do, on the shores of Lake of the Woods, or the Rainy River, or Rainy Lake, care deeply about the water. And this notion that industry doesn't care about water and people, I just find it to be extremely disturbing. I really do. And I would encourage you folks to reconsider, and to somehow suggest that industry gets to write their own permits, or they get to pollute because they just want to. They don't want to meet permit standards. Representative Hornstein, you know better than that. I know you do. And we've made great strides. The rivers aren't on fire. The Rainy River today produces more fish than it did when the time that you were talking about. The sturgeon fishing up there is unbelievable the last couple of weeks. Why? Because we've cleaned it up. Largely because what's happened at Boise and International Falls. Representative Eklund, I know how important this stuff is to you. Representative Metza, I know how important this stuff is to you, where you live. Industrial permit holders must comply with standards just like any other permit holder does. They don't write different standards for industry. They are the same standards for industry as they are for municipalities. You know, they also have compliance agreements, so there's all kinds of regulations written into these permits. And again, I'm suggesting that the private industries that provide all kinds of jobs in my neck of the woods for all kinds of people, some people like to refer to some of them as good-paying union jobs. Members, I've seen what's happened at our paper mills across the state of Minnesota. There are fewer people working in them today than there was years ago. Why? Largely because of regulatory climate in the state of Minnesota. I've seen how some of our processing plants in the Red River Valley have had the good fortune to grow and expand. And when they have facilities on the North Dakota side of the river and the Minnesota side of the river, guess where a lot of that expansion takes place? In North Dakota. And we're losing out on opportunities. And we're not losing out on the opportunities because these companies want to pollute. We're losing out on the opportunities because the regulations and the climate and the timelines and the money to do these things is burdensome, it's redundant, and we can do better. Thank you.
Further discussion. Member from Hennepin, Representative Wagenius.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Fabian, just a note for the record that municipal wastewater treatment systems and industry do not put out the same pollutants. One industry is different from another. So there's no one blanket regulation.
Further discussion. Seeing none, a roll call being requested, the clerk will take the roll on the A33 amendment. Clerk will close the roll. There being 48 ayes and 77 nays, the A33 amendment is not adopted. There is an amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment.
Fisher moves to amend Senate File Number 3656, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A34.
I recognize the member from Ramsey, Representative Fisher, to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is basically technical in nature. It cleans up language to make the section more understandable. I would ask for a yes vote.
Discussion to the A34 amendment. Representative Fabian.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I support the amendment.
Further discussion. Seeing none. All those in favor of adoption of the A34 amendments, please signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The A34 amendment is adopted. There is an amendment that the desk clerk will report the amendment.
Hansen moves to amend Senate File 3656, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment is coded A36.
Call upon the member from Dakota, to Representative Hansen, to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. In the discussions we've had so far and in the description of the bill, there's been talk about provisions of the bill where there are individual problems where Minnesotans are coming to the legislature as individuals, and then there are sections proposed to change law. I call these provisions kind of I know a guy provisions that are in the bill. And the A36 amendment relates to wildlife management areas for one of those sections. I do have a secondary amendment, Mr. Speaker.
There is an amendment to the amendment at the desk. The clerk will report the amendment to the amendment.
Hansen is moving to amend his amendment to Senate File number 3656, the second engrossment as amended. The amendment to the amendment is coded A40.
Representative Hansen, to your amendment to your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I would ask for a roll call on this amendment.
A roll call has been requested. Seeing 15 hands, there will be a roll call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members. You're being handed out an article, recent article about the European Union banning neonicotinoid pesticides, insecticides. Now, it's been a while, Representative Schultz, it's been a while since we've talked about this on the floor. And while we've been waiting on this issue, more and more data has come out. So this amendment, the A40 amendment, is a fairly contained amendment. We're talking only about use of the neonicotinoids on wildlife management areas. We're not talking about private use on farms. We're not talking about homeowner use. We're talking about our stewardship and our responsibility only on wildlife management areas to say we won't be using, the state of Minnesota will not be using neonicotinoids on our wildlife management areas. It's a little thing. It's a little thing that can protect the little things that do our pollination, whether they are bees or butterflies, and I would ask you for your support.
Discussion to the A40 amendment. Representative Fabian.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. If Representative Hansen would yield to a question or two.
He will yield. Representative Fabian.
Representative Hansen, how many acres of WMA are there in the state?
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Fabian, I believe we've had testimony that there's 2.2 million acres of WMAs in the state, but many of those, as you know, do not have the management where there is insecticide use. I believe, and maybe Representative Drazkowski could correct me, but there's probably about 36,000 acres where there may be corn planted on those WMAs for food plots.
Representative Fabian.
Well, members, my point here is that in many cases, these are food plots that your local chapter of your Deer Hunters Association or some other conservation group has planted in order to be able to enhance wildlife and improve habitat. And without using, in my area, we've talked about this before, we've used the elk management as an issue. And the DNR wants to plant food plots in order to be able to encourage the elk to be on state land, which I appreciate, rather than in someone's private field. But as I've said before, elk are a lot like human beings. When we go into the buffet, we pick out the things that we like to eat, okay? Now, if a herd of elk in Kitson County are walking down the township road and you have a DNR food plot on the east side of the road where you're not using best management practices in terms of agriculture, including neonics, including drainage, including tillage, okay, including pesticides. And on the west side of the road, okay, you've got the Walebski farms. They've got their nice soybeans there. They're green, they're dried, okay, or they're drained. The field is lush and green. Guess where the elk are going to go? Okay? They're going to go over here. Now, after those soybeans are gone and they've been harvested, yeah, they're going to go on the other side of the road once in a while because that's all that's left. All right? So, members, I appreciate what Representative Hansen is trying to do here, but neonics are a legal product, okay? They're not banned statewide. I don't know why we would, again, in some cases, members, I know farmers who have a cooperative farm agreement and they farm land on WMAs. Again, I don't understand why your side of the aisle kind of keeps picking on agriculture and farmers. They do a great job of managing the things that they do and providing food for us, and quite frankly, they provide food for habitat and food for wildlife. If it wasn't for farmers in the state of Minnesota, we wouldn't have as many deer as we have. We wouldn't have as many ducks as we have. And I know when I go pheasant hunting, Representative Hamilton, you probably know this too, that the best pheasant hunting that I have is in a cattail slough that's got either a cornfield that surrounded it or a soybean field. So we can continue to have this discussion about agriculture and farming and so forth, and we can stand up and we can support agriculture and farming, or we can poke them in the eye again. I encourage a no. Thank you.
The member from Pope, Representative Anderson P.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker and members. Well, it doesn't give me great comfort to hear Representative Hansen say, hey, we're not talking about farming here, not talking about farmers. Well, they were last year and 2 years ago or 3 years ago, whenever it was, when the governor announced the executive order at the state fair at the DNR booth about neonicotinoids and having to prove verification of need. That was all about neonicotinoids. So, again, just taking these little inroads, these little pot shots at agriculture, when some of the things I've read show that the number of beehives in this country are actually stabilizing or in some cases increasing. So beekeepers are doing a good job, and I think they're getting along with farmers and other people that have the actual land out in the country. But let's not pick and start on these little nose under the tent type of things and again attack agriculture. So I would encourage a red vote as well.
The member from Ramsey, Representative Becker-Finn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I will just remind folks that making sure we have pollinators to pollinate crops is probably something that's good for farming and agriculture. You can't have one without the other. So let's keep that in mind. This isn't an attack on agriculture. This is making sure that we're protecting pollinators so that we can continue to have food and that animals and the rest of our environment can continue to thrive.
The member from Nicollet, Representative Johnson C.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I just, when I hear about this side of the aisle picking on farmers, you know, I think you know I'm going to react. This is my 6th year here, and I spent my 6 years learning about farming, working closely with farm organizations, doing my best diligence on both those ag committees, working closely with my colleagues across the aisle on those committees. I've been a fierce fighter for biodiesel. I think I sponsored some legislation on that a couple of years ago that puts a whole lot of cash in the pockets of soybean farmers across this state as we now are doing B20 diesel. I'll tell you, and so I just want to say I personally take offense at that. I really do. We're going to have disagreements on some issues. And the governor is going to put out ideas occasionally. And sometimes in the legislature, we stand up to those. And a lot of times we stand up to those bipartisanly. And we try to work things out. One of the things we've got to learn how to do, not only in the legislature, but more in Minnesota, is to work together. And I'll tell you, I spend a lot of time trying to work together to make sure that agriculture can be the leader in a whole lot of ways on a whole lot of issues. And I support them as they do that. But at times I'll also stand up when I'm disagreeing and I think, well, maybe we need to do better. For instance, we have a genuine disagreement on the groundwater protection rule. But there's a lot of farm organizations right now who are saying, yeah, that makes sense. And yet in this bill, this bill has the political part on it, and I'm not going to get into that issue. And I don't stand to talk about specific issues. But I hope you understand that there's a whole lot of us over here, there's a whole lot of us across Minnesota, farmers included, who are active DFLers, who are working hard to make agriculture a strong industry. I represent the city of Mankato and North Mankato. We're trying to get green seam. We had a bill up, for instance, to support Green Seam, which is an opportunity to really promote economic development in south central and southern Minnesota based on agriculture. Well, I don't see the funding for that. I was glad to get a hearing on that. I appreciate that. But I hope in that next session you'd pick up on that. That's this DFL's idea of how we can really make agriculture a more important role in Minnesota. So please don't do the name calling, okay? We work together, and I'm proud of some of my I was just sharing with my colleague here. I was bragging about my committee chairs, Representative Fabian, Representative Torkelson, Representative Anderson, Representative Hamilton. I was bragging about it. I said, to be honest with you, one of the reasons I chose those committees, I really enjoyed working with you guys. Let's create a culture in this legislature where we can work together to promote agriculture in many different ways. We'll have disagreements, but let's keep working for agriculture together. Thank you.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Representative Fabian, unlike the elk, I'm not going to take the bait. Your argument was that essentially we have to kill the insects in order to save the wildlife. I don't know how that works. Representative Anderson, the science talks about all pollinators, not just honeybees, and the impact, and the data is coming from our own bee lab that we've paid for, the University of Minnesota. The data keeps coming again and again, bumblebees, butterflies, the impacts of neonicotinoids. So the broken record is always whenever you ask anything about impacting the agricultural chemical, or let's just call it the pesticide industry, the response is, why do you hate agriculture? Over and over and over again. This amendment does not impact agriculture. It impacts wildlife management areas, which are public property. So reading my Pheasants Forever magazine, they had a whole article about pollinators and the need for pollinators. And I think they even mentioned neonicotinoids. The need for those pollinators to have the insects to pollinate the plants, but also to provide food for the pheasants. Diversity is strength, and if you knock out the insects, we're going to rue the day. Year after year, year after year, this gets turned into a political debate. Well, it's not even a debate. It's a statement. Limited amendment. This is a limited amendment on public property, how we manage that public property. The data's going to keep coming, folks. The data we pay for, the data that's paid for all over this state, all over the world. There is a difference between farmers and Bayer, Syngenta, Monsanto, or whoever all they are calling themselves now. I think they're only one company now, maybe two. There's a difference between the people who grow the crop and the people who produce the chemicals. Their method is the same. Use individuals to make the case that we cannot put any restrictions. So what this amendment does, it says, how are we going to use our public money on our public lands, the public lands that we treasure, but not all of them, only the wildlife management areas. We wouldn't use neonicotinoids. It's that simple, and I'd ask for a yes vote.
Further discussion? Seeing none, a roll call being requested. The clerk will take the roll on the A40 amendment. Clerk will close the roll. There being 60 ayes and 65 nays, the A40 amendment is not adopted. Members, we return to the A36 amendment. Representative Hansen.
Mr. Speaker, I would withdraw the amendment.
Representative Hansen withdraws the A36 amendment.